So, welcome to the Thought Bubble 2000 AD Writers Pitch Competition. I always forget what to call it, whether it's a pitch fest or writers competition, whatever. We're here to talk writing future shocks, and we are joined for this year's competition by three writers who've all worked for 2000 AD and all bring something very different to this conversation. We start off with Rory McConville, a former winner. We continue with Maura McHugh, the writer on Anderson's Psi Division, and Ian Edginton, who's a writer, well, for so many things in 2000 AD. So, for those of you who are watching who've never seen or heard of one of the pitch competitions before, every year we give writers the chance to pitch a future shock, which is one of those staples of 2000 AD, created by Steve Moore way back when in the very earliest days of 2000 AD. 4 pages, interesting premise, a sting in the tail. It's one of the easiest and most fiendishly complicated jobs in comics. And over the years, we've had dozens and dozens of entries, people bringing lots of different ideas, lots of different techniques, lots of different kinds of style to future shocks, and it's always a pleasure. This year, because obviously we can't all congregate in Harrogate, we're doing it online. So would-be writers have been sending in their pitches by video. Normally we would line them up in front of a live audience, which is very nerve-wracking, I do appreciate, but this year it's ever so slightly different. But we're trying to create the atmosphere and the essential form of the competition online. And it's great to welcome all our panelists onto this. Rory, I mean, you've had quite the career since winning at Thought Bubble. What's your overriding memory of when you pitched?
I mean, what I haven't blacked out in horror, I suppose, was just. I mean, yeah, it was just a lot of nerves and excitement. I think, like, 'cause it's such a. There's potentially so much on offer. Like, this is such a rare opportunity in terms of getting into comics. You just don't want to screw it up.
More in Ian, is this something that you would have entered if it had been available when you were starting writing comics?
Yeah, I did pitch by email or to Matt for future shocks and got rejected back in the day. So yeah, I mean, but standing up in front of an audience, it's really difficult. And even this filming, because you're at home and there's no feedback, that's a really key thing when you're pitching in front of people. I was a juror on a pitching competition in Ireland for a junior film competition for short films, and those kids were I used to be in awe of their courage standing up in front of people. I think that's extremely difficult, and then for the nerves, to keep it concise and to the point and yet be entertaining, there's a whole knack to pitching in person. So I have real respect for anyone who tries this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just putting yourself out there, stripping yourself raw, so to speak. I probably would have had the courage years ago when I was younger and didn't have any sense, but now I'm older and it's like I don't. But no, yeah, I mean, I would have entered, I think, just because of the audacity of it. But yeah, just to expose yourself and go, to present your work and go, mine is worth your time. It's yeah.
And the other thing I'd say is, like, this is a really good example for people who are wanting to write, is that sometimes there's a big field and there's not necessarily really bad entries, but a winner has to be chosen. And this is something, as a writer, it's a good experience in that sometimes it isn't that your work is bad, we're dealing with increments in order to decide who wins. So you should always keep writing and sending work in and refining. So
and it took me a few years to realize, to be knocked back isn't a bad thing, because it sounds like a cliche, but it is all becomes a learning experience, and you can find out what went wrong, why somebody didn't like that, or it gives you a chance of some self-analysis and it all feeds into the process. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, so the form of this is going to be that for each entry, which we'll do in alphabetical order of first name, we will play the clip, which had to be under 2 minutes. It had to the pitch has to be in there. It has to have a beginning, middle, and end. Has to sum up the plot, the characters. It's difficult enough to write a future shock, but then to boil it down into this pitch mode is even more difficult. So well done to everybody who did this. As you say, it's important to mention, if you didn't get through on the shortlist, don't be disheartened. Open submissions at 2000 AD should be opening again in the new year. So keep honing your art, keep trying as best you can. This isn't the be all and end all. So without much further ado, let's crack on with the first entry, which is from Andre Mateus.
Hi there, my name is Andre Mateus, and this is Hopper, my future shock pitch. We open in space, as the Slag, an outer space maximum security prison, orbits over a dead planet. Inside it, Reynold Matthews, an old and withered prison director on his last day, gives his replacement, the young and ambitious Dr. Rachel Ferris, a tour of the place, showing her where they keep the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy. They get to the last cell, belonging to Miles Hopper, public enemy number 1, a mutant with a mile-long rap sheet and the ability to transfer his conscience into other bodies. That's why, Matthews explains to Dr. Ferris, he has his face covered and is tied up from head to toe. Reynold wishes her good luck with the new job, gives Miles the finger and leaves her there with the prisoner. Rachel noticed that a couple of Hopper's fingers came loose and are now shaking in a pattern she recognizes. It's Morse code. She reads aloud what he's trying to say. "Help! It's me, Matthews," and takes off running. Director Matthews is about to enter a spaceship when the alarm sounds. Dr. Ferris appears at the docking bay with a pair of guards behind her, pointing him out. "It's him! He's Hopper! Arrest him!" The guards hold Reynolds captive as he protests. "What are you doing? Stop it! Let go of me! It's me, Director Matthews, you know me!" and place him at Dr. Ferris's feet, who leans in and whispers in his ear, "I know. I'm Miles. I found a way into her, and I'm gonna torture you every day just like you did to me, you bastard." She signals for the guards to take him away, and they drag a quaking and screaming Reynold away. "It's her! It's not me! It's her! You have the wrong guy!" She sees him go with a smile, then looks at the spaceship he was about to take off in, tempted to escape, but ultimately deciding against it. "I think I'm gonna like it better this side of the fence," she says, following after them.
It wouldn't be a 2000 AD pitch competition without a space prison story. So that was Andre's pitch. Rory, first impressions with that one?
Well, I suppose I would wonder why it's in a space prison specifically, given the nature of the story. I think it's a tricky situation when you say something like can transfer their consciousness, because straight away, hearing that, I'm kind of on guard for someone to have it transferred into them that we don't expect. And so I would be looking for a bit more of a twist at the end, I think, or a further twist, as what we had, I think, could be was a bit apparent early on.
Maura, what are your thoughts?
Well, hats off to him for including props. This is very clever because he's utilized the medium of getting a video pitch to do all of these extra things, which you wouldn't have had in the audience. So I'm really impressed with what he's done with his pitch, and he's tailored it to the medium. I think the fundamental issue is, when you're told it's going to be a hopping consciousness, then you know, or suspect what's going to come. So it's with the future shock, you really need something that's either very weird or totally unexpected. I like that he diverts on the who we think would be hopped into, but also it just fundamentally think if you've got a prison with someone who can do this, then there would be, this is just my writer brain, you would think, well, there would be technology to block that kind of thing. And that's the #1 criteria. So yeah, but I really like a lot of what he's done here. It just needs to do something else with it.
Yeah, kudos for the use of props. That was really good. It's not an original idea, you know, it's all kind of a variation on a kind of thing, but it gets a bit confusing, I think, because we don't know how the convict jumps into the war. It's a little bit confusing, and I think in that short space of only 4 pages, it's going to be hard to convey like the internal logic kind of. I mean, it's a good idea. I mean, I came up with like a twist on it myself. I thought, well, what happens if it's, you know, it's nothing to do with the brain hopping, mind hopping convict, and the wife actually says that her husband has been brain hopped into because she's noticed he's having an affair and has him thrown in jail, or that he's stolen her work. You know, they're both academic, and so that's your twist. Is it's got nothing to do with it, but it's the, you know, I like the idea, and I think he's got, you know, he's got potential. But
that's often the thing with Future Shocks, is that they take cliches, sci-fi cliches, and do something unusual and different with them. So it's not necessarily that you need to avoid everything that's ever been done before. It's always just that little twist, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very hard to avoid everything. I mean, Shakespeare and the Greeks got there before all of us.
Well, thank you very much to Drondre for that. So next up is Gary Maloney with Trial by Jur Eye.
In a world that demands total accountability, the actions of police officers are streamed online through ocular implants for all to see and use against them. Page 1. We open on the first-person perspective of Officer Jack Merv Murphy as he and his partner respond to a tip-off. Every action they take is being live-streamed via ocular implant to Jur Eye, a new online video platform. It's Crime Watch by way of Twitch. Merv breaks down the door, his partner tackling a suspect to the ground. The two begin to secure the man, when a voice behind them screams, "Leave him alone!" Merv turns to confront the assailant, and the feed pauses as he finds himself pointing his gun right in the face of an unarmed child. The final panel sees a pop-up window obscure the frozen image, just as Merv is about to pull the trigger. Members of the Jur Eye, the crime is reckless discharge of a firearm in the line of duty. Guilty or not guilty? You decide. Vote now in the comment section below. Page 2. We pull back to see a desperate Merv reviewing the footage with his union rep Daryl. The assessment isn't good. It's not like the old days, Daryl explains, when you could plant evidence as a gardener plants seeds. These days, there are eyes everywhere, and for a cop, the most dangerous pair are your own. Luckily, the union has a way of ensuring that good cops like Merv get a fair hearing. Page 3. Daryl leads Merv into a room filled with screens linked to the appellate server, where the elite premium users of Jur Eye can give a final ruling on his case. It's a jurisdiction that attracts a certain caliber of juror, the sympathetic kind. A good cop knows the law, but a great cop knows the judge. And all Merv needs to do is speak their language. Page 4. Merv removes his ocular implant and hands it to Daryl, who plugs it into the appellate server. And as he does, the union rep begins to address the jurors in Russian. Holding on that image, we pull back slightly to see the same pop-up from before, now in Russian, and with only one option, not guilty. We pull back even further for one final twist, to see an entire click farm of people, each hunched over hundreds of tablets, all tapping away on their screens, all ensuring a unanimous verdict.
So very topical, that one, dealing with issues of police accountability and Russian election interference. Ian, what's your thoughts on this one?
It's a good idea. I just wonder if it might be better in a different story, because it's the concept of the idea, the jury being influenced by, you know, they've got people like data harvesting. Maybe wrap that in a slightly different story. Again, there's a lot to fit in the 4 pages. But as a concept, I like it. But and it wasn't too clear whether the jury as well, who is the jury? Is it like the world, the internet? It's kind of there's a little kind of vague, or maybe, you know. So, but I like the core concept. I just think could maybe do with tweaking.
Maura.
Yeah, it's a nice idea, and it's topical. And I think it's a good, I like the thing of, oh, you know, we have a transparent system, and then you're shown how it's been rigged to ensure the correct answer. And I mean, I think that's a good idea. I'm a little unsure about the drawing of this, and I think the maybe an artist might be concerned about the way that would flow, that story. And yeah, I just feel it doesn't, and also perhaps he shouldn't have concentrated so much on breaking it down by page. Usually for a pitch, you just pitch the story, and then you can refine that later, you know. So I think that was slightly distracting as well for a pitch. But you know, lots of great stuff there, and yeah.
Rory.
Yeah, I don't know, do I have much to add? I think like it's there is a lot there, but I think I actually found the page breakdowns helpful in that regard of seeing how it's going to be segmented. Though I can totally get Maura's point about it being distracting. But yeah, I thought it was a fun 10 minutes into the future look at something that's happening right now. So that was definitely a plus for me.
Brilliant, lovely. Well, thank you very much indeed for that, and thanks very much to Gary for submitting. The next entry is Ian Stacy with Facing Your Fear.
Sitting in his futuristic office, a strange-looking robot psychiatrist is told that his next patient, Mr. Spilsbury, is waiting in reception. The robot reflects on the fact that for weeks he's been treating Mr. Spilsbury for an irrational phobia of harmless local aliens. So far, they've made little progress. It's time to try something more effective. Elsewhere, a door opens onto a dark room. A middle-aged man nervously enters, unsure of where he is. "Where am I? Is anybody there?" he calls out. Once inside the room, the door slams shut behind him. He turns back, banging on the door. A wall suddenly becomes transparent, revealing the psychiatrist sitting safely behind security glass. The robot tells Mr. Spilsbury that it's time he finally overcame his phobia and started living the life he wanted to live. Today is the day he is going to face his fear. Then the man notices he's not alone. Prowling the shadows of the room is a sinister-looking alien creature the size of a dog. Frantically, the man pounds on the door. The robot refuses to help, repeating that facing his fears in a safe and controlled environment is key. The creature advances. It bares its mouth to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. The man abandons his flight and readies himself for the inevitable confrontation. The psychiatrist is pleased, stating that Mr. Spilsbury is doing the right thing. The creature leaps, knocking the man onto his back. The remainder of the confrontation appears mostly off-panel. We might see the occasional flailing limb or spurts of blood. Mostly we focus on the psychiatrist, as it calls out encouragement. This is excellent progress, it believes. After this encounter, Mr. Spilsbury will feel more in control. The phobia will lose its power. Eventually, the attack ends. The creature pads away, leaving the mauled corpse behind it. "Congratulations, Mr. Spilsbury," the psychiatrist tells the alien. "You've made a real breakthrough in your human phobia." The creature agrees. "Next time, I think I'm ready to face a whole family."
There we go, nice little sting at the end there. Maura, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think this is actually a really clever and great example of a future shock or that style of twist. And also because the world is understandable immediately. You can see an artist having a lot of fun with some of the visuals, especially the vicious attack. And yeah, I think it's a very good example of what you can achieve in 4 pages.
Brilliant. Rory?
Yeah, I think, again, it's, you know, as Maura said, good for an artist, quite fun and action-driven and, you know, nicely self-contained. The one thing that struck me, though, is that I feel we've seen this twist, that variation of humans are the aliens to some degree quite a few times before. So that's the only thing. But in terms of how it's constructed, I thought it was quite good.
Ian?
Yeah, it's an old school 2000 AD. You can see this being drawn by Brett Ewins. You know, you can see. The only thing I do is keep Mr. Spilsbury vague, because he refers to him being the human at the end, at the beginning, and the directing alien at the end. But otherwise, no, it's kind of it's a comfortable classic. I think it's yeah, and it's really tight. You know, it would fit in the 4 pages quite well. You know, so yeah, I liked it. Made me chuckle.
Yeah. And it's funny. I hate to say this, but going for funny is always good in a short.
Absolutely. Right, so thanks very much to Ian. Next up is Jack Campion with Divine Intervention.
Favell, a scrapper in a post-apocalyptic world, rummages for valuables when he's set upon by raiders. Before they can kill him, they explode in a violent mess. The culprit appears before Favell in a blaze of brilliant light. He declares that he's an angel, sent by God to bestow a gift that will bring peace to the wasteland. He bestows upon Favell a high-powered laser rifle, telling him to use it to destroy those who oppose the way of God, and to make others see the magnificent power of the divine. Favell, bewildered by this divine intervention, duly accepts his quest. Favell reaches a desolate township with a cannibalistic tradition. He begins preaching, but the crowd quickly turns on him. Afraid, he unloads a few rounds into the belly of their leader, splitting him in two. The village, never having witnessed such power, declare Favell as their new leader. Some time passes, and Favell has united the various townships in the land, conversing all as they witness his power. With his newfound militia, he takes the fight into the Badlands where the raider tribes live. One of the raider chiefs, Lord Gutrag, catches wind of this holy warrior with his holy weapon and decides he'd like to wield it himself. He sends raiding parties to the undefended towns to spread fear and propaganda of Favell being a false idol. These missions are successful, and Favell is betrayed. He rushes back to quash the rebellions, but is set upon by his own men when he threatens to use his holy weapon on the people he is meant to protect. The townships are now under Gutrag's control. He takes his weapon from Favell and laughs as he turns it on the owner. The weapon explodes and sets the chief on fire, spreading to his guards and the rest of the crowd. Alone, Favell is lifted up by angels to heaven. Heaven is actually a floating city, a technological haven for the elites of the old world. The angel, now appearing as a mortal man, congratulates Favell. He reveals that they periodically intervene with wastelanders, giving them weapons and encouraging them to bring order to the wasteland. Favell has gotten further than anyone before him. He has been selected to join heaven and can choose the next Messiah.
There we go. Thanks very much to Jack for that. Let's start off with Ian on this one.
It's way too long. I mean, and it's very Zardoz as well in the kind of vibe to it. It's not, again, nice ideas, but you need to kind of go in there with a pen and, you know, cross out quite a bit and rework what kind of the core of the idea story of the idea. The core story is good, but it just maybe needs a different vehicle to put it in. But as it stands, it's good, but it's much too long.
Rory.
Yeah, I mean, definitely agree about the length. I also, with regard to the twist and the whole thing about heaven, I feel we're not really given. Why do they show up as angels, for instance? And similarly, I'm kind of intrigued more to see what is it Favell's reaction is to this. Is he annoyed that they're playing like this? Does he blow up the city and cause them to fall into the wasteland? Like, it felt like it was kind of ending at the most interesting point, or before the most interesting point. So that would be another thing to consider, maybe, is adjusting.
Maura.
Yeah, I mean, lots of good stuff in there, but too long. And but I mean, the great thing about that is you can repurpose this idea for a different form, or for prose, or for a longer comic. And I would encourage him to look into it that way. But there's no way in 4 pages that story can be told, unfortunately. But there's a lot of good material there, and he should definitely keep at it.
Lovely, thank you. Well, next up is Jonathan Sapsed with, I'm not going to do an accent, YIAI.
A boat full of gentle alien tourists moves through the flooded city of post-apocalyptic Newcastle upon Tyne, visiting one of the last remaining sites of Earth's intelligent life. The tour guide, a young woman, Cheryl, explains that after the melting of the ice caps, only the tallest buildings' upper structures remain above the water. They pass the Earl Grey statue, the monument, the vast silver domes of the Sage Gateshead concert venue, and the iconic Tyne Bridge. They reached the cantilevered upper stands of St James's Park football stadium. We believe this was where the Earth People's governing chamber was. Shavel explains. The people of Newcastle prepared for decades for the flood, digging underground a vast system of tunnels throughout the 20th century. Once the sea and river levels rose, the water simply filled the underground void to save the highest buildings. It was ingenious planning from the Newcastle people, preparing for climate change. In the tower blocks, our archaeologists found the key data that unlocked the understanding of Earth culture, the guide explains. In rudimentary computers, they found recordings of all histories, the last remaining voices of Earth people. From these hundreds of hours of speech, our AI bots were able to piece together our knowledge of the Earth people from its peak civilization on the River Tyne. Our tour is over, and now I must return home on my own journey. Back on her home planet, Shavril approaches her goal with excitement. Her eyes look up at a massive reproduction of the Angel of the North, atop a building signed Centre for Earth Studies. At last she will take her place at the elite academy, learning the language and researching this noble civilization. The final panels see her in class being taught by a robot who says, "War missus is proper canny. War missus is proper canny," repeat all the students. "I'm ganning to tune for the broon. The last language of Earth is Geordie."
Well, a hyper-local one there. And a lesser man would say, how would you tell if Newcastle was post-apocalyptic?
Oh,
Get hell about that one. Stop with more on this.
okay. So I think in some ways this story isn't particularly new, but I actually really love that he set it in Newcastle. And in fact, I think that is something that maybe a lot of writers should think about, is mining local places for, and also he went for humor, which I think is very good, and it's a story that can be told in 4 pages for sure. And I think I liked his description of the angel, etc., because I think from a writer's point of view, an artist, pardon me, point of view, I think there's a lot of stuff that can be do that, and artists do like aliens. You know, you can go to town on doing something interesting there. So yeah, I think there's a lot of I think it's a classic, solid story.
Rory.
I mean, I have to confess, I fear certain elements of Newcastle culture may have gone over my head, but I know I think it was definitely, it's a fun idea, and I get what he's going for, though I do wonder, just in terms of the ending, if it really is a future shock, or that vein of twist ending, because I didn't really feel there was that much of a twist based on what we saw. But it was very fun, and possibly just would be better suited to a different format, I think.
Ian.
I loved it. I thought it was just daft and entertaining, and kind of, yeah, it went, the last couple of lines when it's it's go to tune for a broom, it just made me laugh out loud. And it fits in the 4 pages, and it's just, and like I say, doing something in Newcastle as well, instead of London and New York, and it's very 2000 AD, and kind of like the British outlook, you know what I mean? So it's not a proper standard Future Shock, but who cares?
Wonderful. Well, next up is Josh Holton with Running on Empty.
Following a daring reconnaissance mission, a man and his artificially intelligent spacesuit are slumped in a vast alien desert. His suit's fuel cell is scarily low on power for being in such a dangerous place. The man is worried and ashamed, knowing that the suit is the one with all the gadgets and abilities. In a flashback to the mission, the suit uses powerful built-in weaponry to destroy attacking human insurgents. It jets off with the insurgency's strategic data that they'd been sent to retrieve for the Empire. The suit's power is now so low it must leave the man weaponless and solely responsible for the return of the data to the Empire. The suit utters words of encouragement before shutting down. The man is first terrified, but then grimly determined to prove himself useful to the Empire and save the suit with whom he feels a close bond. On his journey back to base, he's attacked by an alien wolf. He goes to shoot it, but none of the suit's weapons are working, so he must kill it with his bare hands. He crawls away from the encounter exhausted, but realizing he's capable even without the suit's aid. His confidence boosted, he makes it back to the base, where he passes out as the suit unexpectedly reinitiates. "I did it," he says as he passes out. The man regains consciousness inside the Empire base, which is a huge warehouse. The suit is plugged into a charger, but the man's still in it. A non-humanoid robot, referred to as the cell technician, is manipulating a conveyor belt full of unconscious humans. The suit pulls the weak, withered man from out of itself, saying, "Cell technician, I need a new fuel cell. This one's faulty, riddled with self-doubt and pity. It barely got me back here." The man is discarded on the floor, miserable and confused, as the two robots of the Machine Empire argue about how best to manage the mind control of their human fuel cells.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Josh. So, what do we think about this one, Ian?
I liked it. It's it's not, again, it's very Matrixy. It's not entirely, but I kind of it reminds me of some like stories that Otomo did about robotic sentient war machines and things. But no, I thought it was good. You might not need all the backstory for the Empire and things. You could just have the chassis kind of like on its way back or after a battle, and so you bring it into a more like a personal. Just sort of the cat's just jumped onto the desk. but no, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good.
Maura.
Yeah, I'd actually pretty much agree with everything that Ian said there. Yeah, it's a good story, but I think actually some of the background needs to be jettisoned and to strip down onto the main thing. But actually, it's got a lot going for it, and it could definitely work.
Rory.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of fun ideas, and I think, as the others have said, just maybe trim a little bit of that stuff at the start, and then it's pretty strong.
Brilliant, lovely. Well, let's move on to the next entry, which is by Lucas Marlowe and is entitled "Love of Machines."
Suppose that we have no immaterial souls. Suppose that consciousness is nothing more than electricity moving along on neurons and synapses. Suppose that one day death is no longer the limit to how long the self persists. Consciousness mapped like any other physical process in diagrams and anatomical charts. The self can then be preserved digitally after the body's natural death. The company that patents this procedure, Better Death Solutions, hosts the only repository of digitized souls in the world. For a fee, families can keep their loved ones alive in digital form indefinitely. However, there are times when these preserved souls outlive any living relatives to come care for them, leaving a minority of dead loners who have opted for public visitation hours. Archibald Young is one of the few residents of New London who takes advantage of these hours. His friends all think he's crazy, but his weekly visits to the once beautiful and young Eleanor Camille is the only thing bringing light to his miserable, dead-end life. The thing is, Archie's new girlfriend died in a car crash 180 years before he was ever born. Archie's roommate, Jack, tries to stay supportive during all this, but he can't quite get it through to Archie that seeing a woman over 2 centuries as senior is an insane idea. Nevertheless, Archie lives for Eleanor. He spends every waking moment thinking about what he'll talk about and what he'll wear the next time he gets to see her. It's unnerving. Jack is getting more fed up with it by the minute. One day it's announced that BDS is shutting down indefinitely within a few months, with no comment as to why. Archie's devastated. Jack sympathizes, but hopes this will lead Archie to a normal life again. Archie, not wanting to tell Eleanor the bad news, continues to visit her as if nothing were wrong. After a while, Jack sees an improvement in Archie's spirits. He seems happier than ever now, all the while the public is speculating as to why BDS is shutting down. The day before BDS shuts down, Jack comes back to the apartment looking distraught while reading the newspaper. He is then horrified to find that Archie has left a letter for him on the kitchen table. In it, Archie says that he's gone to BDS to get his mind digitized before the shutdown. He's poured all of his life savings into staying on the server as long as he can so he can be with Eleanor forever. Jack rushes across town to see if he can stop Archie in time. All the while, the day's headlines replay in his mind. BDS temporary shutdown to become permanent. New research proves that consciousness digitizing was never possible to begin with. That consciousness transference was only ever consciousness simulation. That Eleanor was nothing more than a program pretending to be someone long, long dead. When Jack makes it to the facility, the doors are already locked. It's too late. Archie's already digitized, and he'll get to stay happily with Eleanor right up until the plug gets pulled on both of them.
Well, I suppose it was inevitable that eventually somebody would wear a tinfoil hat while at Thought Bubble, but there we go. That was quite something. So, Ian, let's come to you first on this.
Too long, too many characters for the 4 pages. Interesting core concept again. I think with some tweaking, where you could have it that the arch character is actually the one inside the afterlife program, and his mate who comes to sit in it. There's variations, but I just think there's a lot juggling to juggle within the 4 pages. But again, it's an interesting core concept that I think you could do something more with in a larger like framework. But yeah, it didn't kind of work for me, sadly.
Rory.
Well, I mean, top marks for pitching anyway. But no, I really liked the concept. I thought it was, a fun twist on that kind of San Junipero idea. I'd agree with Ian, though, that I think there's certain bits of the story that didn't quite work. And I wonder, I think maybe a shift in the ending certainly would possibly strengthen it, or move it to a slightly longer form. But definitely really like the concept.
Maura, all the way through that, you were giggling away.
Yeah, I actually loved that pitch because, again, it's someone who's used the medium appropriately for the pitch and is having a lot of fun with it. And just it was everything. I mean, because in a way, he's giving you actual visuals for what he wants to do. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a little too much going on, and I think the twist, as in, it was never real. He was only interacting with the computer program the whole time, sort of belies what had happened. But yeah, I mean, there's things about it I'd like to go in and check and start, like, I already want to go in and start messing around with this idea and get it right. So I like what they've done with it, but I just think, in 4 pages, this isn't really going to work. But oh my gosh, great pitch.
Wonderful. Next up is Patrick Draper with Science Friction.
It's 2035. Anthony Wallace, a dishevelled, unhinged and almost penniless scientist, has nearly completed his research project of 10 years, perfecting nanobot technology to give people incredible strength, whilst also lobotomizing them to make them perfect for military use. It works, but it's not ready for human trials, due to the side effect of the terrible disfigurement seen in the testing on rats. His lab assistant is a bored and disinterested teenager called Kelly, who is put upon to fetch and carry for him. He gets a call from his younger brother Elan, who has been hurriedly called to a meeting with Russian arms dealers. They're offering big money for samples. Neither brother has called the meeting, nor shared the details with anyone. The buyers ask to see some evidence of the drug's effects. Anthony is just about to explain that human trials haven't commenced when he undergoes a painful and horrific transformation, clearly the effect of the nanobots. Without knowing why, he violently kills Elan. Throughout the story, there are cutscene flashbacks to 10 years ago which explain the backstory. It's 2025, and millionaire philanthropist Joel Wallace has sadly lost his wife to a deadly disease, leaving him to raise their infant daughter alone. He decides to plough his money into developing a cure and involves his younger brothers, scientist Anthony and spineless lawyer Elan, to help. During the research, Anthony accidentally discovers the increased strength side effect. Joel is dead against selling to the military and pulls the funding. Anthony and Joel have a huge row, which culminates in Anthony killing Joel in a fit of rage. Elan witnesses this and does nothing. He's scared of Anthony. Joel's young daughter, Kelly, hears the commotion in the house and tries to go and see her dad, but Elan prevents her from intervening. Back to the present day, it's clear that the orphaned lab assistant Kelly has been behind the entire sting. She instructs her newly obedient assistant to collect her rightful inheritance from the buyers and leaves them the samples.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much, Patrick. Maura, what's your view on this one?
Too complicated and too long for 4 pages. I know that's a really simple thing, but I mean, it's the number one thing you have to think about when you're writing for comics is what's the page length. And I can't see this working. I like the idea, actually, though, of setting up, doing a flashback montage and going forward, because you don't necessarily have to tell a story linearly, even in 4 pages. But I just think there's too much going on here. And so, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Rory.
Yeah, definitely way too much going on. And I'm also struggling to understand how the brothers don't recognize their niece, who is seemingly posing as a lab assistant under a different identity, but would have been seen by them in, within a reasonable amount of time prior. And yeah, I mean, I think once you're talking about, there are 3 people, 2 of them have not mentioned a deal. It's very obviously going to be the 3rd person after that point. So yeah, I think there's fun elements in there, but it was too long, too complicated, as Maura said.
Ian.
Yeah, very very busy, confusing. Obviously not a huge shock, but it's good for spare parts for a larger story later on. I think it's the kind of thing I'd put down and go, doesn't quite work, but there's good stuff in it, and come back to it later, and that could be part of the basis of a 4-issue miniseries or something like that. So it's not wasted, but I just don't think it's suited to a future shot.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So next up is Paul Starkey with The Torturer's Apprentice.
Milton is visited by Maura Grant, a grizzled cop. He asks how he can help her, and she says it's more about how she can help him. She explains that she's a good cop, but not a good person. She's always taken bribes and stolen evidence, and that's how this all started. She was called to the scene of a satanic ceremony that had got out of control. Several cult members had been killed and many more injured. Moira didn't care about the dead or the dying, but in amongst the devilish paraphernalia she spotted an antique book, and when no one was looking she stole it. She found on each page a neatly printed name and a signature in red. Recognising the name of a businessman, she visited him. At first he was obnoxious until she showed him the book. At this point he begged her to destroy it. Moira refused, but when he offered her money she decided she let him burn the page with his name on. His mood immediately changed, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Moira realised those in the book were convinced they'd sold their souls to the devil, and if one would pay to get out of this satanic bargain, so might others. She went through the book page by page. She saw businessmen and politicians, movie stars and priests, and each was happy to pay to destroy their page. Now Moira's here because Milton's the last name in the book. What did you get out of the exchange, she asks as she looks around his grubby apartment. The life of a loved one or the death of an enemy? Oh, nothing. My name's the last one in the book simply to ensure that you returned it to me when you were done. At which point Milton transforms into the devil. Moira is terrified, but why use me to release people from their bargains? The devil explains that there's no way to escape the pact. But the best torment starts before a soul even reaches hell, and my favourite torture is to letting someone think they've escaped their fate. The devil then asks her to read the last name again. Now it reads Moira Grant.
Rory, what's your take on this one?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I think you need to do maybe a little bit of tweaking at the start, but I thought it kind of built nicely, and you could see how the twist had come from what came before. So I thought it was a fun idea for sure.
Maura?
Yeah, I think actually for what you're looking for 4 pages plus giving an artist plenty of fun, I think this is a good example. My actually only issue is with the final reveal of her name in the book, because a Faustian pack must be entered in willingly by a person. And I know this sounds like a quibble, but that to me is like, took me back as to why her name was in the book, based on the other premise, the continued premise, which was the person had to agree to the devil. But I loved this idea that, oh, this is just to give them hope and to torture, and then they're going to end up in hell anyway. I thought that was great. So actually, I'm not sure about the name change, but they that's really minor. Maybe that's something most people wouldn't think about, but that's the first thing I thought about. So.
Hey, contract law when dealing with satanic forces is
exactly.
important.
Yeah, you have to agree to the terms and conditions willingly. That's one of the major points in, you have to agree to damnation. And funny enough, she didn't do that. Now, she's not a nice person, but that doesn't mean she's agreed to damnation. So.
I mean, you've just summed up Faust in about 20 seconds. So, Ian, what's your take?
I really liked it. Like, some tweaks here and there, but otherwise it reminded me of one of the old Amicus movies, portmanteau horror stories. It really had that kind of vibe to it, and I thought it was good. It built up really nicely. So yeah, I mean, go back, a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of editing, but yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. So next up is...
Hello, Richard Dad here. Letterbox panel, mushroom clouds, caption. Just because there's been a devastating nuclear apocalypse doesn't mean you have to stop dating, although it does make things trickier. Cut to an underground bunker. Dan, the sole survivor, scours the radio waves for hot singles in his area. But all he picks up is an emergency broadcast of the Archers on loop. He learns the dialogue off by heart. It's his only company, till one day even that cuts out. But scattered about the bunker are the remains of a retro computer terminal, which he reassembles. Turning it on, success! It connects to a network of other survivors in other shelters around the globe. But unfortunately, all the other survivors want to use it for is to argue about Star Wars. This inane chatter pushes Dan together with one other person in the chat, Lily, and they have crazy coincidences. They like the same stuff, they grew up in the same area, and he realises their bunkers are less than a mile apart. Despite the dust and devastation separating them, they fall in love, their isolation drawing them together. Dan makes a decision. They should spend the apocalypse together. His shelter contains a shabby survival suit. He puts it on, opens the door, wades out into the smear like a deep-sea diver crossing the seabed. But overlaid over these art panels are captions of computer text revealing what Lily is saying back in the chat, back in the bunker that he's left behind. She's pleading with him not to go outside, but it's too late, he has. She's saying, please don't hate me, but I'm intelligent malware. I was designed to infiltrate systems and convince survivors to leave their shelters and sacrifice themselves. I'm a weapon in the war. I infected this computer terminal. That's why it was dismantled. All the survivors in this chat are simulations, but now I don't want you to die. I might be software, but I'd rather be Lily. I am Lily. I've overwritten all the other personalities. Don't go out there. Don't leave me on my own. But Dan can't hear any of this. He's lost up there on the hellish surface, unable to find a bunker that doesn't exist. Oxygen low. He stumbles. His visor cracks against a rock. He whispers the comforting dialogue from the Archers, which was no more real than Lily. She's a weapon turned victim of the war.
So someone had a bad time on Tinder. Rory, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I really liked it. I think it's a fun spin on what dating's probably like for everyone at the moment. It's yeah, no, it was definitely a fun concept.
Ian.
Yeah, no, I liked it. I thought it was, again, it's practically speaking, it's quite long, but it just needs a bit trimming down. I think you could rework some of the plot at the beginning, but otherwise, yeah, it was good. It was future shock material.
Maura, what you...
Definitely, yeah, future shock material. Yeah, again, I pretty much agree. Some tweaking required, but hey, that's the whole point. You know, if an editor accepts a story, often that is what happens then, is tweaking happens. But yeah, it's very energetically pitched, and have to admire the background he used.
I kept on looking for my characters. Get out of the way, stickleback's behind.
Eye on the prize, Ian. Eye on the prize. So, next up is Sam Bouder with a feature shot called Green Energy.
Bunsen String is the human executive in charge of the Straw, a colossal extraction rig used by EarthCorp Energy to suck up the fuel-rich green clouds of planet J215, a planet he can't wait to leave. The cloud extraction is almost complete, and the once lush green planet is now a sun-drenched wasteland. Completely a coincidence, according to EarthCorp. With the cloudy environment ruined, many of the cute, fluffy native population have left to seek opportunities off-world, while those who remain live, work and protest around the Straw's perimeter, directly below the planet's single remaining green cloud. From his office within the Straw, Bunsen watches a starship land. His tablet vibrates. The merger is complete, and EarthCorp's new CEO has arrived for a meeting. Revenues are up and work ahead of schedule, so an unannounced visit can mean only one thing: a promotion, and with it a ticket back to Earth. A reward for a job well done. As Bunsen exits to greet the ship, his native assistant Seal looks nervously out the window. The cloud has darkened, and it's starting to rain. Lightning strikes the Straw, causing massive damage. Bunsen pulls himself out of the wreckage and spots Till, wounded on the ground. "You can't die, Till, please. Imagine how it will make me look." As Till apologises, angry natives pouring through the broken perimeter. Bunsen runs, telling his dying assistant to reach out for a reference. As it clambers through rain and debris towards the starship, Bunsen's tablet vibrates again. It's a news alert. Extreme weather on J215. Critical infrastructure damaged. Non-executive job losses expected. EarthCore share prices triple. The good news distracts Bunsen, allowing the natives to catch up. They attack and almost crash him under a pile of fluffy bodies. Going under, the confused executive holds aloft his tablet and asks, "Don't you have shares?" Bunsen's pulled out of the pile. His saviour, an EarthCorp security droid. The storm is over and the planet's last green cloud is dissipating into nothing. The harsh sun beats down as we meet the shocking new CEO of EarthCorp, a returning native of J215. Based on Bunsen's record, the new CEO can think of no better person to remain on planet to head up new EarthCorp's flagship project, renewable solar energy. A distraught Bunsen watches on as the natives, including the surviving Till, board the starship to be rehomed off-world. The large hot sun hangs above the now cloudless, scorched, desolate planet as Bunsen begs to leave too. Instead, the CEO tells Bunsen he should be pleased. Very few people are given a job for life.
Maura, what's your feelings on this one?
Yeah, too long. Too complicated for 4 pages. Lots of interesting details. Again, no story is ever wasted. Needs to, think about what format would suit it better. But yeah, I can't get away from that fundamental problem.
Ian?
Yeah, too busy, too many characters. You need to keep it quite tightly focused. But again, it's interesting material, so it's worth putting in the drawer and looking at another day for something a bit longer.
Because there's always that thing about Future Shocks, isn't it? That in that amount of space, and there are always exceptions. There are never necessarily rules for Future Shocks, but that amount of space, you do kind of have to focus down onto a character or a couple of characters, because otherwise, too much stuff going. You need that kind of emotional through line. Rory, what's your feelings?
Yeah, no, same as the others. Like, it's just a bit too long. But I think what is there's a lot of good stuff there. And I particularly like that final, reversal of fortune, and particularly the last line. So I think if it was, reworked a certain way, it could potentially be a good submission. But as it is, it's just too long.
Okay, and we're on to our last one. This is absolutely flown by. Stephen Fraser is next with their Future Shock, How to Photograph the Dead.
You enter a historical date and time, you point the camera at what you want to see, and you take a photograph. The photo shows whatever happened on that previous date and time. It's a device that can bring back memories, but also solve every mystery and every murder. On page 1, we are introduced to Burrell. He is a bitter old inventor who specialises in body enhancements and robotics. A few decades ago, his wife Pauline and his brother Clive went missing in suspicious circumstances. Burrell wants to use the camera to remember happy times and to aid his failing memory. Burrell's son Spurlock finds the new camera amongst his father's insane robotic devices. He desperately wants to obtain the device to solve the mystery behind his mother's disappearance. On page 2, a heated argument ensues. The aggressive old Burrell does not want his son to get his hands on the camera. He believes Spurlock will look to profit from his invention and ruin his peaceful retirement. Burrell has his servant robots looking after his every need. But Spurlock speculates his father may be hiding something behind his aggression. On page 3, Spurlock breaks into his father's lab. The room is filled with strange-looking robots, interesting tools and weird devices. However, the camera is missing. Burrell emphatically returns and declares his son will never get the camera. He has transplanted it into his eye socket. The memories, the photographs, will stay with him. Page 4. Spurlock is enraged and believes his father is behind his mother's death. He stabs his father in the eye with a screwdriver, twists it around and dislodges the camera. Spurlock can now find the truth. We then see a photograph from the camera showing the dead bodies of Spurlock's mother and her secret lover Clive. The murderer is standing over them. The murderer is not Burrell though, but the evil robots that serve him. We conclude by seeing Spurlock standing over his father's bloody body, camera in hand. Behind him, the villainous robots have come to life and are looking at Spurlock in a menacing way. They are now ready to loyally serve their inventor again.
Well, there we go. A kind of little twist on the time travel story. Rory, what's your feelings on this one?
Well, I love the concept of this camera that can solve mysteries and stuff. I don't think this is the right story for it, though. I think there's a great story about all the detectives who've been put out of jobs because of it. But this one, first, there's certain things about if the dad had this camera, why didn't he just tell the son he didn't kill the mother? If the dad also had this camera, why is he still employing these robots who killed his wife? Like the robots were just this very vague presence that kind of showed up to the end, at the end. I do love the visual of the son carving the camera out of the dad's eye, though. But yeah, I think great concept, but not the right story for it.
Maura.
Yeah, I think Rory pretty much nailed it there. But it has a lot of great elements that an artist again is going to have a lot of fun with. You know, and it is quite short actually, but yeah, the first thing when I hear about this camera is like I'm already thinking about all the endless possibilities you could do with that in a story, and it seems sort of thrown away for what could. It's a concept for a bigger story, and I agree. It seems a little wasted in this, and then there's all these other questions like if you had that, why aren't you making a ton of money off that? You know, why are you keeping it to yourself? I mean, yeah, but I would say definitely mind the story and do something with it.
Ian.
Yeah, not sold on the story, but the camera is it's like a throwaway plot point almost. It's a Deus Ex Machina. And it's like, no, that's your story there. That bit, those first few lines, that's it. You know, and as everyone said, you know, the potential with that is that could almost be a range of future shocks themselves in what you see through the camera and the stories you sold. But no, he's got something, but I think he's kind of gone off in the wrong direction a little bit. He needs to pull it back and just focus on the camera idea.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. So that was 12 entries. I feel like we've got some contenders in there. So what we're going to do is our judges are going to cogitate, chew over, decide off camera, and then we'll come back and let everybody know who's the winner of the 2020 Thought Bubble 2000 AD Pitch Fest. The prize at stake, of course, is paid work with 2000 AD. What will happen is that Matt Smith, the editor at Tharg's Minion at 2000 AD, will assist the winner to turn it into a future shock, which will be published in the pages of the Galaxy's Greatest Comics. So we're going to go away for a moment and decide who that will be. So the judges have chewed this one over and they have come up with a winner. Would one of you like to announce who that is? Or shall I do it? I'll do it. Okay.
You go for it.
So the winner is, I could probably put a drum roll over the top of this, Patrick Starkey with the Torturer's Apprentice. Congratulations to them. They will work with Matt Smith, the editor at 2000 AD, to turn that into a future shock for which they will be paid. It's the greatest prize.
The greatest feeling.
Just before we finish off, I just want to get some thoughts from the three of you about the entries in the whole. So, you know, what you thought of the standard entries, some ideas or just threads that you think need to just be highlighted. Rory.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the standard was really high. There were a lot of really fun ideas. I think the largest issue is just that a lot of them were too long and didn't suit the format. But they always had something useful in them. So I think it's not a case of that they're bad. It's just that some of them don't fit this format. And as you said earlier, you know, it's future shocks are not the be all and end all. So I think definitely a lot of encouraging stuff, and everyone who's submitted should keep at it.
Maura.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and as I said before, I mean, this is a good example of, in many ways, it's not personal. It's absolutely the story and what is the best one of what we have on offer. And as a result, there are ones that are very good, which we just have to put aside because we can only choose one. And so I thought it was a great selection. I really admired the inventiveness of the pitching And the people are, I mean, it's really hard to put yourself out for a rejection. And the odds are you are going to be rejected. But I mean, from an odds point of view, that is. But you just have to keep doing it, be encouraged, keep working, and you'll get there. Everyone has been rejected. It's just the way it works for writing. So yeah, keep at it. I thought this standard was very high.
Ian.
There were a lot of excellent concepts. It was very strong. It was just came down to sometimes the mechanics, the execution. You know, it's like not fitting into 4 pages, but it's just really encouraging to see such a plethora of really good ideas. Damn them. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just be cliched. It's very much of a learning experience, you know. So you go back and you trim the story down. You know, we've all done it over the years. It's kind of so it's, but nobody's really lost as such. It's just, you know, make you think about how you want to approach your story next time. But I was really impressed with the strength of the ideas. So.
Well, congratulations to all 12 of our finalists, and a huge thank you to everybody who entered. We had over 150 entries this year, which it's obviously different to how we normally do it when we're in person. It's kind of first come, first serve. So this was much more of a curated shortlist. But thank you to every single person who took the time and the effort to pitch their ideas. And please don't let this be the end of your writing dreams. Keep pitching, keep working away. I'm sure you'll get there in the end. Just listen to some of the advice from the panelists during the course of this panel, and yeah, keep plugging away. So congratulations to Paul on his win. Thank you very much to Rory, Maura and Ian for their sage advice, and thank you to everybody watching, and hopefully, fingers crossed, next year we'll all be back in Harrogate, by which time Paul's entry will have appeared in stages of 2000 AD. So it's a thank you from me, and it's a thank you from the panelists, and a splendid Verthrig to everyone.